statistic. Everything else is more accurate when we're getting better estimates of our coefficients. You can't really, and notice I never did this, but you can't really compare your R-squareds from your IV regression with your OLS regressions because they're calculated differently. So they're really not comparable. So you shouldn't say, oh, well, my R-squared goes down. Well, it's a different mathematical computation. So it doesn't mean the model's any better or worse. It just means that it's different. So they're really not comparable. Multiple endogenous variables. This is called the order condition. You need as many instruments as you have endogenous variables. So you could have more than one endogenous variable. And if you do have more than one endogenous variable, you need more than one instrument. So like in the case of identifying demand, we had 2 instruments, wage and cheese. So that's called being over-identified. Yeah. So we're exactly identified when we have the exact number of instruments that we have endogenous variables. We're over-identified, like we were in this case, where we have more instruments than we have endogenous variables. And we're under-identified if we don't have enough instruments. So let's say we had 2 endogenous variables, but only 1 instrument. So, for example, the rank condition, what is this? Yeah, this is the more technical definition. The excluded exogenous variables are not perfectly correlated with the included exogenous variables. If they were, regression wouldn't work anyway, so it's kind of irrelevant. Here's an example of multiple endogenous variables. So we already know price is endogenous. The whole price is determined within the model, interaction of supply and demand. And we also know that advertising is endogenous by the optimum advertising rule. So in this case, we have 2 endogenous variables. We need instruments for both of those. Now, we can kind of come up with instruments for advertising using the price of advertising. And we can use an input price for as an instrument for our price of output. So here we need 2 instruments as opposed to, because we have 2 endogenous variables. And then our Houseman test would still be the same thing. But we'd have to test advertising, throw it into our sales equation, D-stat and all that other stuff. All right, so that's the main point. The more endogenous, you need an instrument for every endogenous variable. Any questions? Let me give you one more example. And this was from a former student of mine that went on to get her PhD. She's at University of Arizona. She studied under Oaxaca, the guy that came up with the decomposition that I stole. It's not a Quare decomposition. But she wrote a paper on LinkedIn. And what she found was that she found 2 main results. She found that, so, what do you call the LinkedIn? I mean, they're not likes, they're like when you have lots of friends on LinkedIn, what is that called?
Connections.
Connections? she ran this regression. She actually, she got this data from LinkedIn, which was awesome because to get a company like LinkedIn or any of these other big companies to share data with you is almost impossible. I think she got it from Oaxaca because he's him. But what she found was beta 1, it's positive. The more connections you got, the more money you make. So what does that tell you to go out and do right now while you're sitting there in front of your computer? Start making connections, exactly. And then tomorrow you're going to get a raise.
Yeah.
Boom.
That makes so much sense.
Show up in a fur coat, a Lamborghini next week. And you're the man, right? Where's the endogeneity? So what she's saying is, and again, the way this is drawn is, yeah, the more connections you have, the more money you're going to make.
The more money you make, the more connections you have.
What's that?
So the more money you make, the more connections you have. The other
More
way.
people want to connect with you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there could be this two-way causality. So she sent this to me before she sent it out to publication, and I actually had it. That was one thing, but I also had another one, which was you got a job, you're not happy with what you make, you want a new job, you want to make more money. How do you go about looking for a new job? What's one of the things you're going to do?
Network.
Network. You're going to start making more connections, right? So it's not that connections are causing you to make more, it's that you want to make more, so you make more connections. So this is perfectly plausible. Or the fact that I got lots of money, everyone wants to everyone wants to be connected with me on LinkedIn. That's one, but I think kind of from a behavioral perspective, this one also makes sense in that, yeah, I want to make more money, I'm going to look for a new job, I'm going to start making connections, and as I start searching for a job. The other one was, what was it? It was the same thing, but it was, instead of wages, it was, she ran the same regression, it was, I think it was weeks unemployed. And now it was alpha 0 plus alpha 1 number of connections. And again, the idea is the more connections you got, the shorter the time you're unemployed. I kind of said the same thing. Well, if I'm unemployed and I'm looking for a job, what am I going to start doing? I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start making connections. So I didn't tell her the paper was wrong. I just said, when you send this to a journal, I guarantee you they're going to ask, have you considered the endogeneity? And you probably should try to fix it somehow by finding a instrument. You really need an instrument for connections. Connections is somehow, again, just kind of theoretically, it's somehow endogenous. So we need something that's correlated with connections but doesn't belong in this wage equation, or correlated with connections that doesn't belong in this unemployment equation. She decided to give up on paper. And, she switched from being an academic, and now she probably makes twice as much working at Facebook now. So, but she wanted to pursue a career in teaching. This was going to be her first published paper. She sent it to me to take a look at it. And again, I didn't tell her. I said it was a great paper. I loved it. I just said, look, you know, if I was a referee, if you send this to me, this is boom. These are the first questions I'd ask. Did you ever consider endogeneity? It's going to bias these coefficients. It's going to make. I'm sure LinkedIn liked this paper. Yeah, be on LinkedIn and make as many connections. Use our services as much as possible. That's good for us. All I'm saying is that ordinary least-squares regression without correcting for endogeneity is probably going to overstate those beta 0, beta 1, and alpha 1. It's going to result in a bias of some sort. So, she did a good job. She does a better job now, working at Facebook. So, she's doing all right. She's doing all right. Just goes to show, this endogeneity stuff, it's really everywhere. So, one of my students, or not one of my students, but I could tell you 100 of these stories, but yeah, in interviews, one of the first questions is there any endogeneity? They'll write something on the board, is there any endogeneity here? How would you correct it? They'll usually give you something pretty low, under slow pitch softball, something like this, like a sales and advertising where you should know this. Not something that would require, a PhD to kind of ponder this, but you should know that price is always going to be endogenous. Advertising is probably always going to be endogenous also, and you just got to be able to kind of be conversant with it. You don't have to solve it there, but say why is advertising endogenous? Well, because some firms will advertise a certain percentage of sales, so that sales isn't exogenous. It depends on sales. So you've got that two-way causality. So being able to just kind of be conversant in this stuff. And in the end, if you're doing any kind of thing that requires demand estimation, which means pricing, forecasting, promotional analysis, which we just did, the decomposition, all that stuff is going to suffer from endogeneity. All that stuff potentially suffers from endogeneity, and we should have probably accounted for that. But this is really technical stuff, would you say? Yeah, you wouldn't cover this in 580, would you? Probably not. One, we're kind of out of time, but two, yeah, I don't know. But like I said, this is really important stuff. This is what I start my quantitative marketing classes with. First, day one is we got to control for endogeneity. It's going to be part of every problem set. In graduate school, one of my professors said, look, if endogeneity isn't part of an answer to every question, then you shouldn't graduate. You should fail. You should leave now. So you just got to make sure that whenever question you're being asked, you got to address the issue of, is there some endogeneity, two-way causality, identification, whatever it is. So, yeah, like I said, I would be remiss if I didn't cover this. But it's really abstract stuff. But doesn't mean it's not everywhere. So, all right, I guess we're done. Questions? Go Garoppolo, I guess.